hear the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Pun Kelly get caught in the fray. Facts and logic with a twist of jest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor blows the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity where they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Seen Fun Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow.
Hi there, and welcome to today's Pun Show. Today I'm going to talk about, I'm going to spend most of the time talking about the Great Replacement Theory and how Donald Trump's administration has completely embraced the Great Replacement Theory and how its actions prove it, even if its words deny it. But I'll go into like the history of the replacement theory, and then I'll go into the activities of the Trump administration that prove that he is 100% behind this what really is a white supremacist racist theory, and how he is doing everything he legally can to combat this replacement. But first, I'm going to talk about a few other things. I'm going to start off with this ridiculous comment here. Whoops. Why is it? It's not working for some reason. Hang on. For some reason, I'm not getting... Let's try this again.
By giving the patient the money herself, though, she becomes a wiser consumer. And just think about it. If she goes and gets 2 types of shampoo and one's $1 cheaper, she'll get the cheaper one, and the other one lowers their price. Once you give her the power of having the purse, the power of making the decision, she's going to shop, get the lower price. That begins to save her money and squeeze fat and waste out of the healthcare system. That ultimately translates into lower premiums. This is the first step in lowering healthcare costs. Give the patient the power.
All right, just real quick.
Okay, let's just break that down in all its ridiculousness. First of all, did he just really compare shampoo to healthcare? Let me explain what the differences are. First of all, with shampoo, if I wash my hair with that shampoo, it does not matter who I am, right? Like, the shampoo is going to cost the company that makes the shampoo the same, regardless of what kind of hair I have. They have a known amount of money that they are going to pay for the shampoo. They have a known cost that goes into it, and then they can establish their profit based on that cost. It's a consistent cost versus insurance, which has a variable cost based on who the customer is. If you have if you're a healthy person, don't have any history of diseases and whatnot, which may or may not be your own fault. Some people get sick and didn't deserve it, believe it or not. But let's say you have somebody that is a cancer survivor. There is a higher risk to the insurance company than someone who has never had cancer. So the cost of that patient is not consistent to the insurer. And so if you change the cost of the patient from one to the other, then the shampoo company, let's say that the shampoo company, it depends on who buys the shampoo, right? And they're going to lose money if they sell it to certain people, and they're going to make money if they sell it to other people. Well, they're only going to want to sell the shampoo to the people they make money off of. So what they're going to do is they're going to start choosing who can buy their shampoo. Do you see what I'm saying? So then the people that want their shampoo can still buy it. But the people who they're going to start excluding people who can't buy their shampoo. So then the people that can't buy their shampoo are going to have to buy other shampoos, and the other shampoos are going to raise their prices because they don't want to lose money on the shampoos. And so for some people, the price of shampoo will go down, and for other people, the price of shampoo will go up. That's the first thing that's ridiculous about this, is that people have pre-existing conditions, and those pre-existing conditions before the Affordable Care Act made it so that some people were priced out of the insurance market. He's assuming that the cost is the same for all insurance companies, and it's not. He's assuming that the cost is the same with all patients, and it's not. There's a real issue with that. The second thing is, okay, so you say, well, we will include, we'll keep the pre-existing condition mandates. Well, then what happens is the insurance company or the shampoo company is just guaranteed to lose money if it doesn't get some kind of compensation from the government or guarantees from the government. And so it just stops selling shampoo altogether. Or it only sells really, really high-priced shampoos. So now the person that can only afford cheap shampoo can't get shampoo anymore, so they just stop buying shampoo. And everybody walks around with greasy, nappy hair. Except we're not talking about shampoo here. We're talking about healthcare. And that brings up the third thing. Did you really just compare healthcare to shampoo? Like, where is your moral compass here? Healthcare and shampoo are not the same thing. Shampoo doesn't keep you alive if you're dying. It's like they want to sell this medical savings account plus high deductible insurance as though that is somehow the heal-all. That's what was broken that was fixed. We want to go back to a failed system under the pretext that we just passed Affordable Care Act when everything was hunky-dory, Jim Dandy Keen fine? No. The Affordable Care Act was implemented because the healthcare system was broken, and it's not perfect. And Obama has always said it was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to be a start. Build on the Affordable Care Act. There are 20 million people right now who are insured that wouldn't be insured without the Affordable Care Act, and probably more. The number of the uninsured rate has gone down dramatically because of the Affordable Care Act. So don't tell me it doesn't work. It does work. It could just work better. And there's something called a death spiral that I wish people on the media would start talking about. And what that means is that because, if you're only offering the expensive shampoo, the more you need shampoo, the more you're still going to pay for it. So the more insurance costs, you're only going to pay for it if you really, really need that insurance. And so what happens is more and more people start canceling their insurance. And the more people that cancel their insurance, the higher the insurance goes up, because it's becomes more selective to only sick people, which means the insurance companies have to pay more money to those only sick people. And so you end up in a death spiral because people don't have health care. More and more people don't have health care. And it becomes something where you can exclusively get it through an employee-based system, which locks you into a job. People are afraid to leave their jobs. This is what the Republicans want. They want people basically chained to their jobs without freedom to change jobs. And then they want to, like AI their jobs and cut their pay and cut their benefits and cut their union rights. They won't be happy until America is a bunch of serfs. Don't be confused. This shampoo analogy is just bogus. All right. So wanted to talk about that real briefly. Secondly, I keep hearing like people are quoting Megyn Kelly and her barely legal comment referring to some of the girls that Epstein used as 15 or 14 and they're barely legal. Can I point out something? I want to clarify this. 14 or 15 is not barely illegal. 14 or 15 is completely illegal. There's no barely legal to it. Barely legal means you're on the legal side of the line. Barely legal is 18, 17 in some states, maybe 16 in Romeo and Juliet laws. But 15 is just not legal. It is illegal. It's not barely legal. It's illegal. Stop calling 15 barely legal. That's all I have to say about that. Okay. So now, more on the whole Epstein thing. First, I want to talk about Clay Higgins and his little, his lone vote justified on, well, we shouldn't leak the names of the innocent people because we'll just smear them or whatever. Okay, first of all, and he wants to leave it all to the Oversight Committee. First of all, the Oversight Committee is extremely partisan. And so I would trust nothing that came from the Oversight Committee. And neither would anybody on the left and a lot of people on the right that are feeling like there's a cover-up going on here. So if certain names aren't explained, then it's not like we're going to go, oh, well, I guess Trump didn't do anything. And it's not just about Trump. It's, you want to talk about Clinton, you want to talk about Gates, you want to talk about anyone. Because the other thing it does is it just makes, if the Oversight Committee mentions them, then guilt is assumed. Because we're not mentioning the innocent people, we're only mentioning the guilty people. So then you're convicting these people without any kind of due process. So like people might say, well, how can you be on the Epstein list and not be guilty? So I'll give you an example. Stephen Hawking was on Epstein Island. Does anybody really think that Stephen Hawking raped girls? He's literally physically not capable of doing so, right? So what happened? Well, he wasn't capable of doing so. So what happened? How did he end up on the island? Well, Epstein had a submarine, saw that Hawking had never been underwater before and had always wanted to go underwater. So he brought him out to Epstein Island on a retreat so he could go underwater on a submarine. Okay, so that's an example of somebody who was innocent of any wrongdoing, doesn't even necessarily know, there's no indication he knew that the island was used for these evil purposes. He just went on a submarine. All right. So there are people that are connected to Epstein who did not necessarily do something wrong. Epstein did have legitimate philanthropic philanthropic, what's the word I'm looking for? Activities. Like he did have philanthropic activities. So he could, you could have people that were associated with those and not associated with the pedophilia and all that. So Roman the Great says, so is it confirmed yet that Trump is a pedo? And I would like to answer the question this way. I think that we have put too much emphasis on Trump on this, whether it's for or against. Like whether you think, oh, we shouldn't release the files because it's just a smear to get Trump, or we should release the files because they're covering up for Trump. I will say this: we should release the files because the girls that were violated need justice. It's not about Trump. It's not about Clinton. It's not about Bill Gates. It's not about any of them. It's about the women who want justice. And everyone who is guilty belongs in prison. And, the other side of the Clay Higgins thing, everybody whose name is referenced to it, and they deserve to have their names cleared. Right? Like we know that their name is like somehow they were on the flight logs or whatever. Okay. So if Bill Clinton raped girls, Bill Clinton belongs in prison. But if Bill Clinton really was only flying to Africa like he says, and like the flight logs show, then he shouldn't be smeared. Like, we should know the context by which these names are associated so that we can know who is actually innocent and know who is guilty. I don't want everything filtered through a partisan oversight committee. Dershowitz is so clean. Lefty under. Yeah, Dershowitz was the one that was like, oh, well, he was only convicted of one 17-year-old, a couple of months shy of 18, like trying to dismiss. There's 1,000 victims, Alan. The one he is convicted of was on a plea deal that was so bogus and so outrageous that nobody, only you, Alan, only you would use that as some sort of apology for him. So explain them why they didn't release them since 2016. Why not if after Trump? Because Maxwell was under investigation, and because the Department of Justice prevents the release of files of ongoing investigations, and that includes the appeals process. The appeals process didn't finish up until October of this year, and that's why there was suddenly this push this fall, because everybody knew that this was going to happen and this was going to end, and that's why. So I think, again, on both sides of this, I'm not partisan on this issue. Anybody that wants that was guilty belongs in prison, but there are legitimate reasons that they weren't released under Biden or under the first Trump administration. I completely agree with you. Thank you. So do I. I don't even always agree with me, but on this one, I agree with me. Investing and collecting evidence for crimes committed is not against the law. Justice for all. You're right. Amen. So that's why I don't like the so somebody doesn't like political live streams, but there's all kinds of channels on YouTube. Why aren't the victims naming the names? You'd have to ask them. I think right now maybe they're classified or something. I don't know. I think it would be interesting if they did. Everyone, but let's not make the victims the culprits here. Like, let's not blame the victims literally. Everyone knows that this is all for a way for Democrats to start impeachment. No, everybody doesn't know that. I know that Republicans say that, but again, this is not a partisan thing to me. I don't think it's about Trump. And I don't think it should be made about Trump. Okay. So back to Clay Higgins. The innocent need to be declared innocent. And we need to know the context of the innocent people's name, and the guilty people, we need to know the context too. So then on the indictments, I don't know if you heard, there just came out today, the grand jury. Oh, and I'm sorry, this is actually, let me put that aside for a second. There's new investigations. So Pam Bondi is making these new investigations, declaring these new investigations. And this goes back to the person's question about why didn't it get released until now? And the reason is because the Department of Justice has standard policy to not release files on ongoing investigations. So Trump ordered there be these new investigations. And Pam Bondi is saying, oh, she found new evidence. They just found it magically. They don't, where did they come from? What is it? Who knows? Like, but they found this magical new evidence, and that magical new evidence means that they need to reopen the case. So now, when Congress passes the this law, they can say, oh, well, there's an ongoing investigation. We can't release it. It's standard DOJ policy. Now, this is policy, not law. Okay. And Eric Holder did this with the, I can't remember the name of it, the gun runner thing that was going on with Mexico. Eric Holder had tried to deny a subpoena from Congress and ended up losing in court. So this would be challenged in court, and eventually Congress would win, but it would kick the can down the road further, which is what Trump wants to do. He wants to have this bogus investigation into only Democrats to cover up for his own involvement, possibly, in Epstein. And I know this because if he were to want to actually have them released, as he said, he could just order them released. And you notice when people ask him about that, he gets really, really cranky and calls them a piggy or whatever. So there are some issues. The second thing is, what was I saying? First thing. Okay, so anyway, that's the gist of that. They don't want the investigation. This is a change of strategy, not a change of position. They're going to try and use DOJ policy as it, but if he were to order it, then DOJ couldn't hide behind executive privilege, because how do you hide behind executive privilege when the president is the one doing the ordering? So that's why he's like, okay, I'll sign the bill, but I won't make the order, because he can sign the bill and then fight the bill and just say, well, this is what my attorney general says. I'm trying to stay away from the politics. Yeah, I've already answered that question, so you can go back and look at it, because the DOJ. And yes, Epstein was a Democrat donor. He also donated a lot of money to Republicans. This is not a partisan thing. I am smarter than this. Okay. Are you saying there is no other reason Trump would be cautious? I'm saying it's not about Trump. I am saying if he wanted to release the files, he could just order the files released. The entire operation of human trafficking so far has deeper implications in America and the entire world of power and money. These accusations deserve investigations and truth. I agree. Okay, experts, except for everyone mentioned is not a Democrat. What about Steve Bannon? Where were the parents? Okay, anyway, I'm just gonna get away from the comments here because I've got the rest of the show to move on with. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was the James Comey indictment. And what's Lindsay Harrigan or whatever her name is? Like, this is why you don't have, insurance lawyers become U.S. attorneys. Apparently, they admitted in court today that the grand jury indictment, which was signed, was never actually shown to the grand jury. Now, I'm not a legal expert, I'm not a lawyer, but I have a pretty good idea that in order for an indictment to be valid, the grand jury has to actually see the indictment. So I was saying yesterday that I think that this thing is probably going to get thrown out of court. And now it definitely will get thrown out of court. Yesterday she was saying that you could use Comey's not exercising his Fifth Amendment rights against him, which is obviously not true. It is true in a civil trial, but it's not true in a criminal trial, which maybe that's why she got confused, because she's an insurance lawyer and an ambulance chaser, but not a real lawyer. Well, she's a real lawyer. I shouldn't say that, but not a very good one. So anyway, that one's going to get thrown out of court. It never should have been brought to court, and it was obviously just political retribution anyway. So there's a weird argument going on in my my comments are going wild here, which is cool because that means people are watching. But anyway, that's it for that part. Now the next thing I want to talk about is Lockheed Martin. This is interesting to me. Nobody's really like mentioning this. Okay, Lockheed Martin. This has to do with Donald Trump and the announcement yesterday that we're going to sell all these F-35s to Saudi Arabia. Lockheed Martin makes F-35s. So Lockheed Martin stands to make around $10 to $15 billion with the B off of this deal. Then there's a kind of principle that Israel is guaranteed air superiority. So if Saudi Arabia gets all these F-35s, that means that Israel gets new F-35s to offset the imbalance so that they can still maintain superiority. All right. So that means that Lockheed Martin gets to sell more F-35s and make billions of more dollars off of that sale. Then you find out. So I was like, wow, Lockheed Martin's really going to do well off of this. So I went and I just looked it up. Guess what? Lockheed Martin's donated over $1 million to Trump's inauguration, and Lockheed Martin has donated over $10 million to Trump's, ballroom. Sounds like a pretty good investment to me. I don't know about you, but they get billions of dollars, and all they had to do was put down 10 million. Okay, so somebody was like talking about they got paid, the victims on Epstein. I would just like to point out, it is considered child sex trafficking to if you engage in any engagement in minors, people under 18 by federal law. If you pay somebody for sex, that is considered sex trafficking, and it is a federal crime. So it's a crime for the person paying them. It's not a crime for the person that is being raped. So, like, just forget that. Like, why? This is so weird to me that there are people that are actually trying to rationalize sex trafficking. Well, they made money. Yeah, The women that are there asking for justice are not like super exuberant about all the money they made. So we're going to go on to the main thing I wanted to talk about today, which is the great replacement theory. And once again, for this part, I am going to be away from my screen that shows the the comments. So if I don't see your comment, it doesn't mean that I'm ignoring you. It means that I just haven't seen it yet. I'll try and remember to come back here every now and then. I am ignoring all our ongoing debate about Epstein because I think I've said enough about it and I don't want to spend the rest of this show arguing with people in the comment section. So, okay, what is the great replacement theory? And, you know, like people argue that Donald Trump is not a white supremacist. I am going to show you that he actually is a white supremacist in both word and deed, and there's really no conversation to be had about it. There's no argument, I should say. Obviously, there's a conversation to be had because I'm having one. Okay. So what is the great replacement theory? I made this dashboard, and it is my cat just came in here. He looked at me. He's like, it's lunchtime. Sorry, buddy. I forgot to feed you before the... Anyway. So what is the great replacement theory? Its origins, race elements, and real world harms of great replacement theory as a white supremacist conspiracy theory. So, okay, I'm sorry. The dashboard will have three parts. First, defining what it is. Second, how Biden responded to it. And 3, how Trump is endorsing it. So first, what is the great replacement theory? It is a white nationalist conspiracy theory claiming that white populations in Western countries are being intentionally replaced through immigration and higher birth rates among non-white populations. So we're importing brown people, and then the brown people breed and they make more brown people, and then there's more brown people than white people. That's what the theory is. That somehow there is this master plan to replace white people with people of color. Adherents falsely claim this is orchestrated by Jewish people, political elites, or globalists to eliminate white majorities in Western culture. So every time you hear Donald Trump talking about elites and globalism and George Soros, who is, by the way, code word for Jewish people, he's referring to this. This is like when we talk about dog whistles, it doesn't mean that we can't understand what he says. It means that we know what he is, who he is talking to. It doesn't mean that we can't hear the whistle. Like, don't get on that. No, it means when he blows it, the dogs come running. And if you're defending him, you're one of the dogs. So, the great replacement theory started with racist pseudoscience about preserving white racial purity, gained mainstream acceptance in the U.S. and Europe. It led to discriminatory immigration restrictions like the 1924 Immigration Act, which kind of tied, you can only immigrate here if you're, other countries had immigrated here before, and kind of tied it to that. So only Western Europeans, like the percent of people that were Western European was locked in as being like the vast majority of future immigrants, because it was the vast majority of past immigrants. So that went on, and this was very much a part of our history in the, all the way up until World War II, and in some ways since. It has ramifications with Hitler, and Nazi Germany. And it basically said that white people were genetically superior to other people of color. Then in 1973, LeCamp de Saints wrote a novel, published a racist novel depicting mass immigration destroying Western civilization, becoming influential in white nationalist circles. So when Donald Trump goes to Europe and tells people that immigrants are going to destroy you, he is being a racist. That is absolutely 100%. He is touting replacement theory rhetoric. Like people are always like, "Oh, Trump's not a racist." It's like, yes, he is. And we'll go on. I'll keep. So then, in 2011, French writer Renaud Camus published Le Grand Replacement, explicitly articulating the conspiracy theory. He claimed that Muslim immigration was replacing French people. And, and then people like Tucker Carlson have just seized on that. People like Elon Musk have seized on this kind of rhetoric that people are coming in, brown people are coming in, and they're going to replace white people. This is not like, I'm not being hyperbolic. They are literally making these arguments. In 2017, white supremacists chanted, "You will not replace us, and Jews will not replace us," bringing the theory into into American mainstream awareness. And Trump did one of his little rope-de-dope things where he pretends like he's condemning them, but then he really endorses them. And people are always like, well, he said there's very fine people on both sides. He meant that there were some people that were, like he also condemned the white supremacists. But if you go back and actually listen to what he said, when he said there are very fine people on both sides, he was qualifying that with the both sides was actually qualifying the people on the left, the people that were against white supremacy. He was like saying some of them were good people too. So like the nod to condemning racism was just, what happened? It was just a nod. Everybody knew that's not what he meant. It's like he does this. This was like it's like when he said on January 6th, he said one time peacefully, and then he said 20 times fight. And he wants everybody to believe that while he was sitting there and watching the whole thing for 3 hours, that he really meant peacefully. No. He just wants plausible deniability. And that's what he was doing with the both sides thing. So in 2017, or so 2019 to present, there's been mass shootings and mainstreaming. Theory cited in manifestos of multiple mass shooters, including outside of the country, Christchurch, El Paso, Buffalo, increasingly referenced by mainstream political figures and media personalities like Tucker Carlson. There's the core racist elements of it. White nationalism. It's built on the premise that white people are a distinct race deserving their own nations and should remain the majority. This is what America First is. When they say America First, they mean white people first. They mean white nationalism. When they talk about Christian nationalism, they mean white nationalism. There's anti-Semitism, often blame Jewish people as orchestrators of the alleged replacement, invoking age-old conspiracy tropes. And they do this with George Soros. Like they're not going to come out and say, oh, Jewish people are bad. But they say George Soros is funding the the No Kings rally. George Soros, who happens to be Jewish and a Holocaust survivor, by the way. So There's some comments in here that are just like not worth going into. And actually, Eric, I have watched the entire clip, and I do notice that if you actually watch the entire clip, you would see that he starts with talking about the people on the left. So I'm not gaslighting. I'm telling you the truth. You're free to look it up. I'm not going to carve out a time on the show to talk about it. So the white nationalism built on, anti-Semitism, which is this George Soros, globalist, elitist, all of that is anti-Semitism. There's anti-immigrant racism, portrays immigrants, especially from Latin America, Africa, and majority Muslim countries as invaders rather than individuals seeking opportunity. Yeah, I think we've heard Donald Trump refer to the invasion at the southern border before. I don't think there's any question that he is referring to brown people as invaders. That is 100% like that. That's why you voted for him. Demographic panic treats demographic change as inherently threatening, premised on racial hierarchy rather than democratic pluralism. And we see this kind of stuff every time we see, oh, we're going to become a minority country. And, you know, all this talk about DEI stuff. Oh, they're taking away white jobs. And dehumanization, use of language of invasion, occupation, and extinction to dehumanize immigrants and people of color. When he says things, literally quoting Hitler, when he says things like they're poisoning the blood of our country. All right, so hang on, I'm just going to get rid of this guy. When he's saying they're poisoning the blood of our country, that is what he is doing. He is using this kind of rhetoric, this dehumanizing rhetoric. He calls them animals. He calls them subhuman. He literally uses dehumanizing language when he talks about immigrants. So some notable terrorist attacks motivated by this theory. The 2019 Christchurch in New Zealand, 51 killed in a mosque shooting, manifesto titled The Great Replacement. And no, that's not America, but it is the Great Replacement. This is the logic that he is executing. 2019 El Paso, Texas, 23 killed in a Walmart shooting targeting Hispanic community. And I believe that's the one where they actually were quoting Trump. The 2022 Buffalo, New York, 10 killed in supermarket shooting in predominantly black neighborhood. And 2019 in Poway, California, 1 killed, 3 injured in a synagogue shooting. There's been other things too. This was just a short sample. And now these things are being mainstreamed. This idea. Cable news host describing immigration as replacing Americans. Tucker Carlson, political candidates warning of demographic change threatening American culture. You won't have a country anymore. Social media influencers using coded language about birth rate decline and Western civilization. We're talking to you, Elon. Think tanks promoting Western chauvinism and opposition to multicultural democracy, like the Federalist Society. Okay. So these are actions. So this has been a problem. And okay, sorry, buddy. My cat. My cat might be joining us. He's at my foot right now. So this was an issue. And remember, during the January 6th sacking of the Capitol, there were people that brought in Confederate flags and paraded them around. So Joe Biden took action, right? So when he was president, domestic terrorism prevention, he directed federal law enforcement to prioritize investigations of white supremacist violence and groups promoting the theory as terrorism. And the Republican Party freaked out about it. Like, somehow, if you combat white supremacist terrorism, that means that you're being racist against white people. He ordered intelligence community to regularly assess and publicly report on threats, share information, and joint terrorism task force to include dedicated units for domestic white supremacist threats. And remember, this was like 70% of terrorist attacks since like 2005 have been white supremacist organizations. This was not just randomly saying, oh, like they're trying to do, like with Charlie Kirk, and they're trying to blame it on trans people or whatever. Executive order and policy directives, national strategy, issue executive order establishing comprehensive national strategy to combat domestic violence with specific focus on supremacist ideology. So I'm just going to scroll through this. Federal prosecution and legal tools. They hate crime prosecution, like Matthew Shepard and James Byrd from the Hate Crimes Prevention Act in 2009, and instituted some programs. DHS Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention Grant Program. All right, so I'm just going to scroll down to part 3, because part 2, like Joe Biden did some things to try and address the issue, but the main thing I want to focus on is how Donald Trump has exacerbated the issue, and really his policy 100% is a policy of the replacement theory. So, critical framing. The following sections documents Trump administration policies that treat great replacement theory not as a dangerous conspiracy theory to be combated, but as describing a real phenomenon requiring government intervention. So he's trying to counter the replacement, not the racism behind the replacement theory. Rather than countering the racist ideology, these actions aim to stop what the administration frames as an actual replacement of Americans through immigration and demographic change. The administration uses invasion rhetoric officially, implements policies prioritizing white refugees, and frames declining American birth rates as a national security crisis requiring immediate action. Why do you think that they're talking about this birth rate thing? That is part of the whole look, the brown people are having babies and the white people are not. It's only a matter of time before the brown people outnumber the white people. So part 2 above outlined what the president could do to counter conspiracy theory itself. This section shows that Trump is doing to counter what he treats as the actual replacement. Okay. So what has he done since he was inaugurated in his second term? Protecting the American people against invasion. Day 1 order declares immigration an invasion requiring emergency measures. And it's not an invasion. Invasion is a word that has a meaning. It means that an armed force from another country is invaded. What is an invasion is what Russia did to Ukraine. That's an invasion. Brown people coming over to the border illegally, whether you agree with it or not, whether you think it's right or wrong, whether you think it should be legal or not, it is not an invasion. It is objectively not an invasion. No matter what Donald Trump calls it, it's still not an invasion. The word has a meaning. Constitutional justification, guaranteeing the state's protection against invasion. Proclamation invokes constitutional invasion clause to claim extraordinary authority. So he's using this word invasion for a reason. Like, there is, like, if a country invades us with the military, the president needs to be able to have the resources to counter that invasion. But brown people coming over here illegally is not an invasion. He is using the word invasion to justify racist policy. Systemic usage, invasion, appears throughout executive orders, proclamations, DHS directives, and presidential statements as official government position. And it may be the official government position, but it's still a lie. It is a white supremacist lie. Russell Vought, Trump's budget chief, stated that they chose invasion language because it unlocked powers to act against immigration without normal legal constraints. So they even admit they're using this word just to justify doing what they're doing, which would be illegal if they didn't use that word. Legal Theory Administration argues invasion again allows suspension of habeas corpus, use of military force domestically, and circumvention of immigration law procedures. So just call it invasion, and then you can do whatever you want. Because they're brown people. And we're going to get into it's brown people. It's not, they're not worried about immigrants. They're not worried about undocumented workers. Right now, believe it or not, the ICE has detained more brown American citizens than it has white undocumented migrants. So don't tell me it's about illegal immigrants. It is clearly about brown people. The military style response to invasion. Since an invasion actually means a military coming over the border, it makes sense to be able to use the military to stop an actual invasion. But moms with 6th grade kids dropping them off to school are not combatants. They're not threatening people's lives. And they don't require a militant response. Trump wrote that Los Angeles has been invaded and occupied by illegal aliens and criminals. It has not been occupied. It's not run by illegal aliens and criminals. And ordered officials to liberate Los Angeles from migrant invasion. Like, this is just racist rhetoric. Explicitly framing American cities as under foreign occupation requiring military liberation. And that is not the case. That is absolutely not the case. Got some weird comments. I do free movement of people is an anthropomorphic right. Anthropomorphic right. Anthropic right. That's the whole reason we have asylum laws is because of what happened to the Jews in Germany. They were persecuted and they were trying to flee, and people in Europe would send them back to Germany. And so it was decided, if your life is under threat, then you have the human right to seek asylum, to leave that country that is persecuting you. And there are people that are going to die if they stay where they are. Now, some people, it may not be the government that's threatening them. It may be a cartel gang. But they're still going to die, and a bullet in your head is a bullet in your head, no matter who pulled the trigger. And so you have a right to flee to save your own life. Something that the Republican administration thinks only applies to white people who aren't actually under threat, like white South African farmers. And, you got people like Jesus loves all saying illegals go back to your country. Does Jesus love illegals? And again, if it's about people that are here illegally going back to your country, why are we arresting more brown citizens than we are people that are white that are here illegally? Answer me that. God deported Charlie Kirk and Hulk Hogan. I don't know if I want to comment on that. Okay, so going back to they're blocking non-white. So they're not just like deporting people. They're also blocking non-white immigration efforts. So they're saying, oh, do it the right way. But then they're making it so that there is no right way to do it. They're dismantling legal pathways for non-white immigrants. They blocked virtually all asylum at southern border on day one, cutting off primary legal pathway for Central American, South American, and Caribbean migrants. They immediately terminated an app allowing, people are like, well, apply for asylum before you go. So Joe Biden said, okay, we'll do that. And they made an app that people could apply for asylum before they get here. And then they flew over here on their own dime after they had been screened. And then the Republicans made an issue and said and lied and said that the government was secretly flying them over here. Then Donald Trump shut down that system, and he has even gone as far as taking away the legal status of people that came over here legally and then saying that they're over here illegally because he took away their legal status. And guess what? They're all brown. Remain in Mexico, forced waiting, require non-Mexican asylum seekers to wait in dangerous Mexican borders during proceedings. The crime rate against asylum seekers in Mexico is terrifying. It's like 70 to 90%, and it's got like a 1% solve rate. It's just basically a buffet for criminals. If you're seeking asylum and you're trapped on the border, you're going to be a crime victim. They shut down the offices in Latin American countries that process protection claims before travel. And they block pathways that allow hundreds of thousands of predominantly non-white citizens, some non-white migrants, to remain in the USA. So, and then they have ICE agents that when people show up for their asylum hearing, arrest them at their asylum hearing. Like they say, oh, do it the right way, but then they block the right way. What is the right way? You say, do it the right way, like my parents did, or my ancestors did. Your ancestors got on a boat and got off the boat. What didn't change, what changed is not the way they came over here. What changed is the legality of what that way is. And now, if you fly over here from England on a tourist visa, which is much easier to get, and you just stay here, you're not really in danger of being arrested at any point. But if you come over here from Mexico, if you're an American citizen who happens to be brown and talking Spanish, you can be detained for days. We've even had American citizens deported. So don't tell me that it's about legality, because you're cutting off the legal way for brown people to get here, and you're doing at the same time not caring about white people that are coming over here illegally, and you're deporting brown people that are actually citizens. Okay. So this is explicit demographic targeting. The administration cut overall refugee admissions by 94%, while simultaneously prioritizing white South African refugees, bringing the first groups in May through June 25. This is under this bogus notion that white farmers are being persecuted by, like black people that are trying to get revenge for apartheid. That's all bogus. And I have a video on that. You can watch it if you want. But like I thoroughly debunk that whole thing. This represents explicit racial prioritization, blocking refugee pathways for non-white populations fleeing war and persecution while fast-tracking white refugees. This directly operationalizes great replacement theories, dynamic demographic obsessions at the policy level. Then there's preventing children of immigrants from becoming Americans. So this idea of he's trying to get rid of birthright citizenship, which is in the Constitution. Now people say, well, in the Constitution, that's just meant to apply to African people or slaves that were over here at the time. Okay, and it didn't apply to illegal immigrants. I would like to point out, when they wrote that amendment, there was no such thing as an illegal immigrant. There was no immigration law on the books. So it didn't apply to legal immigrants. It didn't apply to illegal immigrants. It applied to, if you had a kid, if you were born here, you were a citizen. And this argument has been heard previously in the Supreme Court multiple times, and it has always been rejected. Yes, U.S. citizens are being deported. I'm not going to argue with you. Look it up. I'm not going to have reality-based discussions with trolls. And yes, it's in the Constitution. See, yeah, this is a bogus argument, and the Supreme Court has already heard it, and it's already rejected it. Jesus loves potatoes, but he doesn't love brown people. Okay, so the birthright citizenship, that is great replacement theory. If Jesus loves potatoes here, this guy, you're a racist. You're a racist. Yeah, I called it. You are a racist. Okay, so mass removal of non-white immigrants already in the U.S. So the mass deportations, I've got other dashboards to share about this. Order detention of all immigrants apprehended, ending successful alternatives programs with 99% compliance rate. Expedited removal expansion. Extended expedited removal. No court hearing to anyone in U.S. less than 2 years. Affects millions of established residents. Expedited removal means that there's no due process if you've been here less than 2 years. It used to be if you're here less than 30 days. Now it's been expanded to 2 years, which means that if you've been here a year and a half and ICE catches you, they can deport you without even having a hearing. Which is, like, you can argue about the whether or not that should be the case, but I'm just pointing out that they are trying to get rid of as many brown people as possible. And it's in the selective enforcement. The Hispanics make up about 80% of illegal immigrants, or actually, I think it's even less now. It's more like 60% of illegal immigrants. They make up 95% of deportations. And most of the other 5% is Asians. So almost no white people are being deported, even though there are white people that are over here that are illegal. They use the Alien Enemies Act to justify this, which again is comes back to the whole invasion rhetoric, like their justification for invoking the Alien Enemies Act is to say that these immigrants are invaders, and so therefore they are alien enemies. There's these large-scale ICE raids in major cities, including places in schools, churches, hospitals. These are not military operations. These are not military and like defenders. These are moms and teachers and kids and dads that are just trying to make a living to support their family. And you can talk about, well, they're illegal or whatever, but they're not violent. They're not criminals in the sense they're not violent criminals the way Trump is saying. They're using that rhetoric to justify things because they know that what they're doing is harmful. These policies aim to remove millions of immigrants who entered legally. And like I should point out again, a lot of these people entered here legally or are trying to obtain legal status. They are going through the legal process right now. Okay, hang on. I got to get rid of this guy. I mean, I'm like, I'm all for honest, good faith rebuttals and discussions, but don't come on here with just trolling, anti-hate, or just hateful rhetoric. I'll ban you from the channel quicker than you can say, Machine Pun Kelly. I'm really tired of just hate. Exactly. These people that they have Jesus, like anytime you see some of these hateful racist comments and you look at their bios, Christian, sorry, Jesus was brown. All right. Increasing American birth rates is a national security imperative. This is like one of the reasons that they're so bent on things like making abortion illegal. They want to force women to have birth and to have their little rape babies. Because we need to have white people. President repeatedly called for American baby boom since 2023, making increased births a policy priority. They want to pay people to have babies. There's just this weird, they're so weird. You know why the US fertility rate is declining? Because they don't want to bring babies into a world that the Republicans are trying to leave for them. Who wants to, climate change is real. And it's going to have a real impact. If you're born today, by the time you're 75, it'll be the year 2100. And there will be such massive climate change impact that civilization, as we know it today, will not really exist. Who wants to bring a kid into that? A lot of people don't. Climate change denialists will say no, but you're not to deny climate change is to deny basic laws of physics, like entropy. Anyway, won't get distracted. I don't want to get sidetracked into all that. So they're offering $5,000 as a baby bonus. IVF access expansion. It's okay, life begins at conception unless it's an IVF. Fertility drug price cuts and making abortion illegal. Trying to make it so that women don't have, like, they want to go back to women just being pumped through the system and then pump out babies, like not having careers and stuff. They're making it out like if a woman has a career, then somehow they're attacking women that choose to stay at home. Like it's a personal affront to other women for a woman to like say, hey, I'd like to be a doctor. They're defunding higher education. Budget proposals include major cuts to higher education, aligned with Heritage Foundation analysis showing inverse correlation between women's education and fertility. Educated women have fewer children. Gee, women shouldn't be able to choose how many children they have. If you educate them, they might not decide to have 12, little trailer park babies. Title 10 gutting, mass layoffs at HHS Office of Population Affairs, overseeing $300 million contraceptive access programs for low-income Americans. Like, no. They're like, you see, like, they're trying to force women to be low-income Americans, and then they're trying to take away their contraception choices, and they're going to take away their right to get an abortion. All of this is just to produce more white babies. That's what it is. This is, I believe, in Project 2025. Yeah. Heritage Foundation Architects Project 2025, which heavily influenced Trump administration, published analysis noting defunding higher education would increase birth rates because the number of women a children has in her lifetime is inversely correlated with the number of years she spends in education. The strategy is explicit. Reduce women's educational and career opportunities to increase births and counter demographic decline. So then they have this two-pronged demographic strategy: black non-white immigration, or block non-white immigration. So first of all, like we've been talking about, they make it so that you can't migrate here legally if you're brown or if you're black. They do this by cutting the number of refugees that are allowed. They do this by cutting the number of asylees that are allowed. They do this by allowing how you can even come over here and apply for asylum. They do this through mass deportations. They do this by attempting to end birthright citizenship. So they're just like, no brown people and then more white people. This is all. The two-pronged approach directly implements Great Replacement Theory's core premise that white populations are being replaced through a combination of immigration and differential birth rates. So the solution to them: stop the immigration invasion and increase American implicitly white birth rates. The administration never explicitly says white, but the racial targeting is evident in the specific prioritization of white South African refugees while blocking predominantly non-white immigration, combined with the demographic paraframing and with the absolute lack of deporting anybody that's white and deporting brown people that are actually citizens. They have deported more brown citizens than they have white non-citizens. Demographic data collection and surveillance, alien registration requirement enforcement. So, how much more do I? Okay. I'm just going to go through this part real quick. I'm going to go into the immigration part of this a lot more thoroughly. Whoa. Because there is very much a racist implementation of the mass deportations. And so, like somebody was asking earlier, where's my proof about, about citizens? I'm coming to it. Alien registration requirement enforcement. Ordered strict enforcement of requirement of non-citizens to register and carry documentation at all times. Yeah, carry your papers. Where have I heard that before? Made a failure to register a criminal enforcement priority. Fingerprinting of all non-citizen adults and children over 14. I mean, my goodness. Cross-agency data integration. Combined data from SS for okay. So they're like pulling all their data to try to find all these illegal immigrants, but they're only concentrating on the brown ones. Administration connections to proto-nationalist movements. These are groups that and people that have advocated for explicitly for white replacement, our great replacement theory, ideology that they have aligned themselves with. The National Con Participation Administration aligned policy advisors spoke at NatalCon conference. Sorry, got the hiccups. Which the Guardian reported included far-right white supremacists as speakers. The Heritage Foundation administration policies closely follow Heritage Foundation. I would say that, it's the blueprint. Project 2025, which Trump knew nothing about, but now has implemented like 75% of. Recommendations on increasing birth rates through education restrictions and demographic management. Elon Musk, key advisor who used X-Twitter platform to promote demographic panic narratives about population collapse and actively discourage corruption use. Speaking of white immigrants from South Africa, policy translation. Ideas once relegated to fringe white nationalist forms now implemented as U.S. official government policy. Okay. So this is just kind of a summing up rhetorical patterns from the white nationalist playbook. When you hear these things, you know that it is white nationalism. Invasion language. Replacement framing, explicit use of language about Americans being replaced in official statements. Occupied territory. Trump described American cities as invaded and occupying, requiring liberation. Aliens dehumanizations. Systemic use of alien terminology rather than immigrant person or migrant, calling them animals, calling them subhuman, saying that they're poisoning the blood of of Americans. All of these things, to diminish the humanity of them. And I'll give you a perfect example of like with alligator Alcatraz, and people were like laughing at the idea that these people could have horrible deaths. And the birth rate panic, which, they've obviously been stirring up. There's 94% reduction in refugee admissions since Trump took office. There has been 0 asylum approvals at the southern border so he's basically completely cut off asylum as a way to come over here. 300,000 TPS holders facing deportation after termination. So over 300,000 people, he said, you came over here legally, but I'm taking away your legal status. They've used the U.S. fertility rate as proof. Which, by the way, we actually want a lower fertility rate, not just nationally, but worldwide, because that means the worldwide population starts to go down and we are in danger of overpopulating the earth. Like, we want a naturally low fertility rate, and a lower fertility rate is a sign of a successful country. The reason you have high fertility rates is, like back in the day, your kids grew up and took over the farm, right? And so then when you got older, your farm was taken care of by your kids, and you were taken care of by your kids. But kids died, because people died. There was a higher mortality rate. So you had to have enough kids to make sure that you were taken care of when you got old. That's kind of a historical global truth. Fertility rates go down when mortality rates go down. Mortality rates go down based on the wealth of the country. So as the nation succeeds, you should see fertility rates going down. 140 plus deported to foreign prison using 1798 wartime law without due process. And now it turns out like that almost none of them were actually even convicted of anything or guilty of any actual crimes. They were just guilty of being brown and having tattoos. So all the white South African refugee groups are being prioritized while overall admissions are slashed. And again, the white South African farmer genocide thing is just a bogus thing. I don't want to go into it because it's a distraction. All right. So these policies are being challenged by people in courts: birthright citizenship, asylum suspension, Alien Enemies Act use, the sanctuary funding cuts, and expedited removal expansion. Okay, rhetoric versus reality. Enforcement claims exaggeration despite record deportation claims. Actual removers in the first 100 days, 72,000, were less than half of Biden's fiscal year. I will say that there's some... that's probably not actually a good comparison, because when Biden was president, we still had emergency levels. We still had emergency COVID measures, so people could come over and just be turned around and sent back. And so the numbers were much higher because you could have the same people come over like 5 days in a row and keep getting sent back. Many, and so anyway, it's apples and oranges. That's all I'm saying. And the people that have, I mean, this is just the first 100 days. And the way like the whole thing is, I'm going to go into the whole deportations thing in a minute. Many policies blocked, courts have blocked or limited several major initiatives as unconstitutional or unlawful. And on this one, like, Republicans keep saying that, oh, these judges are overreaching, never had so many judges rule against the president before. Well, we've never had a president violate the Constitution like this. It's not about the judge. There's like 100 judges and there's one president. Which do you think changed? The 100 judges or the one president? Military deployments, often symbolic rather than operationally significant. But it's still and I think with the military thing, it's just to get people used to it, so that when he takes the next step, they're already there. He's got these, National Guard emergency measures that he's told every state they have to come up with, and all of that kind of stuff. It's so that when he wants to take the next step, he can do it without being challenged. We're used to it. But damage still done. Even bloc parties create fear in immigrant communities. Invasion rhetoric becomes normalized. Demographic panic gains legitimacy. And that is going to have an effect on our economy, by the way. You don't take out 10, 11 million people from the workforce and not have a negative impact on the economy. I mean, even with the price of beef, one of the reasons the price of beef is going up is because we don't have like 40% of the meat processing plants our workers are undocumented workers, and so they're not showing up for work. So we have meat like literally spoiling, like it's either, the cow is slaughtered and then it's waiting to be butchered, but it's not butchered in time, and so it spoils. Or they have can't remember what the word is, but like you prime a cow to get like slaughtered at an ideal weight and an ideal age, and you kind of fatten it up, and then you kill it when it's, like at the ideal weight and age, because that's like perfect for the marbling and all of that kind of stuff. Well, what happens if you can't kill it in time? It goes past its date, and so then like what would have been like prime rib becomes ground beef, because the marbling isn't the same. It's not the same quality of meat that it used to be, because it had to wait 2 more weeks to get slaughtered, because you didn't have enough people in the slaughterhouse to actually slaughter the cow. And you didn't have enough people to butcher the cow after it was slaughtered. So Trump thinks the country is like a company. Lie and fix your own. Yeah. I would just, the one thing I question about your assessment there is that Trump thinks. But other than that, I think you're right. All right. So I'm actually already at an hour and a half. I might have to turn this into a 2-part episode. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to turn this into a 2-part episode. I'm going to make tomorrow is going to be about the actual enforcement issues. So I'm just going to go through this, the rest of this sheet. And then tomorrow I'll go into the actual enforcement, show the people, the actual American citizens who have been detained, who have been arrested, and who have been even in some cases deported. Okay. So how do we counter this whole thing? Countering the theory would involve prosecuting white supremacist violence, condemning the ideology, protecting pluralistic democracy, and using evidence-based counter-messaging. Countering the replacement involves treating demographic change as an existential threat, blocking non-white immigrant as an Okay, so countering the theory versus countering the replacement. One idea is to count the theory, right? Like, are you combating the theory or are you combating the replacement? Biden tried to combat the theory. Trump is trying to combat the replacement by using policy to treat demographic change as an existential threat, blocking non-white immigration as invasion, preventing immigrant children from becoming citizens, and using government power to increase American white birth rates. The administration is doing the latter, operationalizing great replacement theories, core concerns as official U.S. policy rather than combating extremist ideology. So don't tell me he's not. Name one thing he's ever said. Like, oh, just tell me one thing he's ever said. I'm of the belief that actions speak louder than words, and what he is doing is racist. And you don't do racist things if you're not a racist. You don't do white supremacist things if you're not a white supremacist. And his entire policy here is his entire protect the border, close the border, all of that rhetoric, all of his rhetoric on immigration is not about immigration. It's about replacement theory. Because again, more legal American citizens who happen to be brown have been detained by ICE than illegal white people from Europe have been arrested. Don't tell me it's not about race. Don't tell me it's about being illegal. I even had one clown tell me that he was okay with bombing people in the Caribbean because they were illegal aliens. They have managed to conflate being brown with being an illegal alien, even if it's people that are not even immigrants or illegal. They are legally in international waters. They aren't even in America. So they are neither illegal nor immigrants, but they are brown, and you're justifying murdering them because they're brown. If you justify murdering people because they're brown, you might be a racist. So the legal and political historical significance, this represents the first time in modern U.S. history that ideas originating in explicit white nationalist circles and cited in mass shooter manifestos have been adopted as official government policy and rhetoric. Invasion language appears in executive order titles. Declining white birth rates are framed as national security threat. White refugees are prioritized while non-white immigrants are blocked. The administration's policies don't just align with or echo Great Replacement theory, they operationalize it as the organizing framework for U.S. immigration and demographic policy. And we are going to feel the effects of this. We are going to feel the effects of this. Estimates are that the mass deportations, getting rid of all the illegals, means that there's going to be a 7.6 drop in GDP over the next 5 years. You do not decimate your workforce without decimating your economy. It hurts. And it hurts when you're taking out the bottom rung of the ladder. You know what happens when you take out the bottom rung of the ladder? Nobody can climb up the ladder. So, like, this is the heart of what I want to say today, is that Donald Trump is a white supremacist. He is pushing this replacement theory, and this replacement theory is foundational to Nazi Germany. I'm not saying he's a Nazi. I'm saying that he echoes the same kind of rhetoric that the Nazis did. This replacement theory was foundational to Nazi Germany. It is foundational to the Trump administration. Let's stop equivocating. Let's stop. You know, I always hear how dangerous it is to use rhetoric like racism and fascism where it doesn't apply. But do you know what's more dangerous than that? Avoiding using words like racism and fascism when it does apply. There are actual racists, there are actual fascists that are running this country and that are killing people. And I am not going to back away from saying what is happening because it might give Stephen Miller a feelings boo-boo. See, you know, like you got Skippy here. Your words of power have no power. They don't mean nothing. I don't care what they mean to you, Skippy. You can deny all you want, Skippy. But you're peanut butter. Anyway, white supremacy is bad. Racism is bad. Fascism is bad. And those are not just words. Those are concepts and those are ideals that the Trump administration clings to. If you want to look at what fascism is and what racism is, it looks and acts like Donald Trump is speaking and acting. Stop telling me I can't use words like fascism and racism. If you support Donald Trump, you are a fascist and you are a racist because what he is doing is fascism. What he is doing is racism. And if my words have no power, then my words have no power. But my words are still accurate. And that's why you have to resort to, you know, these ad hominem attacks because you know they are. Every time I see these conservatives that say, oh, well, what is define fascism? None of them know what fascism is. I have spent hundreds of hours studying fascism. I know what fascism is. And Donald Trump is a fascist. I've got like 5 videos that talk about what fascism is and go through line by line, detail by detail. I've got hours of content explaining what fascism is and how it applies to Donald Trump. So I do know what fascism is. And I have established in this video that what Donald Trump is doing is racist. So don't tell me my words have no power. The fact that you're denying them proves they do. All right. So that's it for today. I'm going to do this on part 2 tomorrow. And I'll go through and I'll show how ICE is extremely racist in its enforcement of, illegal immigration. And I'll go through and I'll show the statistics and I'll show cases of American citizens that have been detained. All right. Thanks for listening. Seems like I triggered a bunch of MAGAs. They're very, very angry when you point out they're racist and fascists.